February 22nd, 1991. Yesterday, Cooke died by a hand grenade. It was an eye-opener for a lot of people. The boom sounded, and I ran down to see Cooke in pieces. His arm blown off, face black with powder burn, leg hanging on by his pants. It was a sight that is and will be in my memory forever. It's hard to explain what happened that day and how it had an impact on the rest of my life. But I was sitting next to Mike moments before the blast. We were sitting in a circle. There was about 5 of us, and they had just come off patrol, so we were looking at mail and eating, talking about the mission. And Lance Corporal Stroud was working on the radio gear. He was about 20 meters away, and he called over and he asked, "Hey, Corporal Sisco, can you help me with the KY gear?" And as Marines do, I kind of just yelled back, "What are you, a fucking retard? Do it yourself." And everybody started laughing. And Mike looked at me and he said, "Bad dog." And I kind of looked at Mike and we laughed, and I go, "Yeah, that was kind of a dick move." So I got up and walked over and started helping Stroud with the KY gear. I was over there for, I would say, less than a minute or two when I heard the explosion from the place where I was just at. I immediately ran back, and when I got back, I saw Mike in, I can't describe, black with powder burn. Both of his arms were blown off. It's not like the movies at all. There's not a lot of blood. The heat from the grenade just cauterizes everything, and he kind of was sitting back against his pack, and he looked up and kind of his head went down and slumped down, and I knew he was dead. I stood there just looking at him. I had received training when I was in recon. I could put in IVs and probably do a trach, but I knew there was nothing I could do. And within a couple seconds, the corpsman came running over and they knocked me out of the way, and they started working on him. Within 10 or 15 minutes, the medevac helicopter arrived. They loaded him and the other Marines who I was sitting with onto the helicopter, and it flew away. It was a really, I can't really describe the experience. It was a state of shock in a way. But within a little while, I understood that there were things that needed to get done. And one of the things that needed to get done was going through all of his personal gear and inventorying everything and separating everything for the family and the parents, and then taking all the military gear and separating that. And I volunteered to do that. I don't know why. Mike and I were friends. We didn't have a deep friendship. He arrived shortly after me in recon, and we were in the same platoon. We had gone on missions together. We had gone on deployments together. We did a med cruise together, and we built a friendship, and similar to the other friendships that I shared with other members of the platoon. And I just felt it was my responsibility to do the inventory. So I started to separate all of his gear, his personal effects, and the military gear. And I actually had a piece of paper, and I wrote down all of the personal effects. And I can remember, taking my hand and wiping off pieces of flesh and bone and, black and charred off of the personal effects, or trying to wipe them off and putting them in a bag and writing down everything in an inventory. And I remember I got down to the bottom of his pack, and his wallet was down on the bottom. And I pulled his wallet out, and I one social security card and wrote it down, one Pennsylvania driver's license and wrote it down. I think there was $20-something in cash. And when I pulled the social security card out of one of the pockets in the billfold, I noticed a picture. And so for me, I just pulled the picture out and I looked down at it, and it was a picture of Ashley, uh, the girl that I had been dating for the past 7, 8 months. And I kind of looked at it a little like curious, maybe like didn't know why he would have a picture of her. And I turned it over, and on the back it said, "Love, Ashley." And at that moment in time, I can honestly say that I experienced a rush of emotion that I had never ever experienced in my life before, nor did I ever experience it again. Dealing with the death of a friend moments before you are faced with the betrayal of a woman, you are overcome with emotions that you cannot describe. Anger, fear, revenge, everything going through, pulsing through my veins. A 20-year-old young Marine in a combat zone days before the ground invasion, and being faced with this. And I just remember my hands started shaking, and just remember my blood pressure probably was like 200. My heart was racing, and I literally took a knee and sat down for a second. And I noticed the staff sergeant looked over at me and said, "Everything okay, Corporal Cisco?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'm good. Yeah, I'm good." You know, the typical response that most men do for everything. And I did what most men would do. I collected myself, and I continued to, do what I had to do, complete the mission. And I finished writing out the checklist and turned in all the personal gear to the staff sergeant, and removed all of his military gear. And I just sat there by myself. Went out into the desert a couple hundred yards from the position, and just sat there. And I didn't know what to do. I didn't have anyone to talk to. The rage that I was feeling at the moment, I was in a combat zone with, my M16 and my 9mm, and, I wanted revenge, and I couldn't take revenge because the person that I sought revenge for was dead, and the other person was thousands of miles away. And after a while, I started to think, tried to get some clarity and remember what was going on, and I needed answers. And the first thing I did is I went to a couple people in the platoon, because we all hung out together. We'd go out, we would have fun, we'd go drinking, and it was kind of a tight-knit group for some people, and I knew that some people would know the truth. And I remember going to Kuntz. He was the first person I went to, and he was sitting in his fighting hole, and I was livid, and I just started, yelling and asking questions. Do you know what's going on? And what the fuck? And do you know about Ashley? And was Mike hooking up with her? And all these, questions. And I knew that he was, he knew what the situation, and he was afraid to answer. He didn't know what I would do, and I didn't know what I would do. But after a couple minutes, he did tell me that Mike was hooking up with Ashley, and a couple people knew. So now, not only do I have the death and the betrayal, but now there's this embarrassment that, I was ashamed that people knew that, they were hooking up, and I was unaware of it. And, for me, it was very difficult. And I never realized the impact that event had on me, and the cascading effect that it had, not only on my life, the rest of my time in Desert Storm, which I'll talk about, but throughout my life, how it impacted my relationships, how having an intimate relationship with a woman moving forward was a challenge. The inability to trust, the fear that remained, that definitely impacted every relationship moving forward, including the relationship that I had with Belinda that I'll talk about. It impacted my marriage. It impacted my interactions with friends and family. And I really didn't understand it until 30 years later, when I read the war journal, and it ripped the Band-Aid off of that scab, and the scab came off and it bled hard. And now I think, and I hope you understand the reason why I wrote the war journal and the reason why I'm doing the war journal podcast. I believe that my story, although tragic, is not one that should be forgotten. And I think that many people can learn from what happened to me and the adversity that I faced and the challenges that I faced throughout the rest of my life. And it was very difficult for me to talk about this and share this with anyone until I was forced to. And when I did, it was a burden lifted off my shoulders. The relief that I felt was one that I can't describe. And being able to talk about it openly and being able to share my story with other people, I hope it gives them strength. I hope that they can learn from the lessons that I'm going to talk about in the future episodes, podcast episodes. And I truly believe that anyone can learn from the lessons that I'm going to talk about, and it will help them in their lives. And I hope that this episode kind of prompts you or helps you want to view these future episodes, because they provide a lot of insights, not only into my time in the Marine Corps, my time in Desert Storm, but my life. And I think that you'll be able to apply those to your own lives and help you with the challenges and adversity that you may face. I would like to read one more journal entry before I end the podcast. And it was the day after Mike died, February 23rd, 1991. It is a day later and life goes on. It hasn't been brought up at all today. I guess the war is upon us. After I was the one to go through his gear and found a picture of Ashley, I really don't know what to think. I felt so much, it is hard to explain. The rush of emotion that came over me. I was really confused as to the purpose of the Marine Corps officer in combat, due to their lack of ability to command. One of their jobs is to write the letter home. I feel that the lack of friendship the enlisted share, they can never really be close to their enlisted counterparts, so they are not as overcome when something like this happens. And for them, life goes on. On a bright note, I am an ATL again, but in a different platoon. I am confident with my new team and hope we will all come back together. Not much more to say. Tomorrow is the breach, and we shall see what happens. See you soon. A couple things that happened that I really want to talk about. The day after Mike died, the battalion commander, the company CEO, they held a formation, and the platoons stood around, and they wanted to give a motivational speech or address the troops to move beyond that event. And I remember myself, I was disinterested. I couldn't focus. I didn't really even hear what the captain was saying, except for one part. And it was when the captain literally called Mike by the wrong name. And I don't know if everyone heard it, but I know that several of us in the platoon heard it, and we kind of looked at each other. And it was that moment that I knew what I wrote, how the officers, really didn't have that connection with their enlisted counterparts, and how for a lot of them, they didn't really care. It was all about the mission and about their careers and about doing those things that were going to promote them or propel their careers. And there wasn't that empathy and deep sense of loss. And I know that there were a couple people in the platoon that really took it hard. Sergeant Bates and was one of them, and a couple others. But the next day was the breach, and I had to pack everything away and suppress all my emotions and focus on being the assistant team leader in the platoon that I just got picked up in, and being one of the lead element for 2nd Marine Division to go across the minefields and breach the minefields and lead the assault to Kuwait City. And for me, that was what I needed at the time to make sure that I was focused, make sure that I was dedicated to the team and the mission, and could just forget about what happened, no matter how tragic. And for me, I'm happy in a way that the breach was the following day. It really provided me that operating space I needed to remove my emotions and focus on something. And let me just talk a minute about, my personal life. And after my divorce, I had to go through a custody battle. And I would say that the second darkest day in my life was when my children were removed from my life by the family court system. After I had raised 2 of my 3 children by myself for a year without any alcohol use or drug use or physical abuse or emotional abuse or neglect, the judge who presided in my case gave full legal custody of all 3 of my children to my ex-wife. When I drove home from the courtroom that day, I can honestly say the emotions that I felt at that time were similar, if not more powerful than the emotions that I felt when Mike died and I found out about Ashley. My children are the world to me. I love being a father, and being prepared for combat and having the training and having your friends around, and then going into the family court system where you're totally unprepared and you have no one. And I come home to an empty house where I see all my children's belongings. That, for me, is why I'm doing this. That was what prompted me to write the War Journal. This is what has prompted me to do the War Journal podcast and to be an advocate for reform of the family court system and children's rights. So I look forward to the next couple episodes. I'm going to have some really good guests on. I'm going to talk about the relationship with Belinda and how that manifested, and there's a very interesting story behind that. And I'm also going to start talking about the life lessons that started to unfold and appear before me, and talking about religion and faith, talking about education, talking about friendship, talking about relationships, and I can't wait to share them, because as a 20-year-old Marine who had just experienced that and then goes into combat and then reflecting on those things and having the time to reflect, those insights are invaluable, and I hope that everyone can learn from them. Thanks again. I really appreciate your time, and please share this podcast with friends and family and individuals that you think will find value and meaning and help. It will help them. Thank you.